when I sat down, I actually had Caitlin Clark's mum sit directly next to me. And her whole family was there. Her dad was there, her brother was there. It was a whole bunch of other people, relatives, it looked like. So maybe like auntie and uncle, I'm not sure. Family, friends. But they definitely came to watch her play, and the expectation, I'm sure, was that she was playing.
Something happened at a recent Indiana Fever game that the cameras picked up quietly, and once people noticed what they were looking at, it moved across the internet with the speed that only genuinely emotional moments produce. Joe, the trainer, walked over to the family section during the game, not to the media row, not to a front office executive sitting in a premium suite, to the family section, and sitting right there with their eyes locked on that court was Caitlin Clark's family. Her mom, her dad, the people who have been the foundation of everything she has built and everything she has become. Welcome back to Hoopsonic, where we cover the stories that land beyond the box score and explain why they matter to the larger picture of what is happening with this franchise. That moment and what it represented about the current state of the Indiana Fever's relationship with their most important player is the conversation the organization would very much prefer to have, quietly rather than publicly.
He came over to Caitlin Clark's mum, and he actually came over and was like, hey, and her mum said to him, how's she going? And he said, yeah. And then obviously they tried to speak discreetly next to me, but it was something along the lines of, she pulled up, saw this today, and we tried to see if she was all right, but we just made the decision to sit her out.
These are the people who drove her to gyms before the sun came up on cold Iowa mornings when nobody outside of a small community of youth basketball families had any idea who Caitlin Clark was going to become. The people who watched her progress from a little girl with a basketball in a driveway in Des Moines to the most commercially significant and most widely discussed athlete in the history of women's professional sports. They made the trip to Indianapolis. They showed up because that is what her family does and has always done. They show up, and what they got in return for that trip, what they sat in those seats and watched with their own eyes across the course of that evening was their daughter on the bench, dressed and ready, watching the game from the sideline while the building buzzed with the energy of an audience that paid to see her play. That specific image traveled the internet for a reason that goes beyond the Clark fanbase's documented frustration with minutes management.
Here we go again. Kelly Crosskoff, Amber Cox move right here. Doing a last minute update. Caitlin Clark is not playing tonight. And I gotta count my blessings that I was able to watch Caitlin Clark. I was able to get signatures, the whole everything with her. I got the Caitlin Clark experience twice this year. I feel bad for the fans that travel so far to go see her play, and they won't be able to see her tonight, and they pull the carpet underneath all those fans. This is wrong, guys. This is wrong. They should have had this update a day before or two.
Before anything else in this conversation gets examined, you have to understand something fundamental about who Caitlin Clark is as a competitive human being, because it is the essential context for everything else. She is not built to sit. She has never been built to sit. This is a player who logged 40+ minutes in college basketball with the casual consistency of someone who considered that workload completely unremarkable. A player who, under head coach Christy Sides in her rookie professional season, played almost every meaningful competitive minute available to her. She was not being protected and managed and rotated carefully in her first professional year. She was being deployed as the engine of an offense, and she thrived in that role because extended time on the floor is what allows her specific and extraordinary basketball intelligence to fully express itself. Watching her on the bench in full uniform with her feet bouncing and her eyes tracking every single play communicates everything about how she experiences those moments.
This is Caitlin. She is not going to be benched if she's not injured, or she's not going to do any damage to herself. She is a true competitor to her core. Seriously, this is Caitlin not playing. This is her wishing she was on the floor. This is her going, God, get me out there. She said recently, being on the bench, yes, she wants to be one of the best teammates she can in terms of being supportive, but God knows she does not want to be benched. She wants to be playing ball. She loves it more than anybody.
Basketball is not something Clark does for a living in the way that most people do things for a living. It is wired into her at a level that sits considerably deeper than professional obligation or competitive ambition. It is the thing she was made for and the thing she has built her entire identity around, across decades of deliberate development and competitive pursuit. When you watch her on that bench, fully dressed, fully physically prepared, mentally present, and tracking every possession, feet moving with an energy that the physical stillness of sitting cannot contain, you can see the competitive instinct operating in real time without any outlet available to direct it. The drive does not shut off when a coach makes a substitution. For a competitor at her level, it burns hotter in the absence of participation than it does during the participation itself. Her family sitting in those stands, watching Joe walk toward them, watching the substitution patterns play out across the game, watched exactly what the cameras watched. Their daughter was ready to play. She was completely prepared and physically available, and she was not playing.
She needs to let the Indiana Fever know, I will walk. I will walk. Y'all get y'all stuff together. Stop putting your damn hands on me. Stop touching me. Stephanie White, get the hell out of my way on offense, or else I can take my talents elsewhere. I can go elsewhere. I can sell tickets out elsewhere. My fans already are starting to show up less and less because they don't trust y'all dealing with me.
Under Christie's sides, the formula was uncomplicated and the results it produced were straightforward to evaluate. Caitlin Clark played. She averaged 35.4 minutes per game in her rookie season, which ranked in the top 5 across the entire WNBA. She was the complete engine of the offensive system, the primary playmaker, the floor spacer who forced defenses into impossible decisions, the competitive personality that made every possession feel like something significant was about to happen. Christie Sides understood something that should not have required any sophisticated coaching analysis to arrive at. When Clark is on the floor, the Indiana Fever are a different basketball team in every measurable and observable way. The scoring is more efficient, the spacing is more dangerous, the decision-making is more connected, the crowd is more engaged, the building is louder and more electric and more worth the ticket price that fans are paying to be inside it. Sellouts at home, road game sellouts in arenas that had never sold out for a WNBA game before, fans driving hours for the specific and irreplaceable experience of watching her play live in real time. That was the standard fans experienced, and it is the standard they still expect when they purchase tickets. So when Stephanie White began pulling Clark at moments that the fan base could not understand or predict, the response was not analytical confusion about rotation philosophy. It was deep and growing and increasingly organized frustration from people who made financial commitments based on a specific expectation that is not being consistently honored.
Just following up on Caitlin from earlier, she didn't practice yesterday. Why was she not listed on the injury report, or why wasn't the injury report updated like earlier today if she woke up with soreness in her back?
Well, not everybody that doesn't practice or gets a pro day is on the injury report, so that happens all the time. And she wasn't listed on the injury report earlier because we expected her to play.
And is she injured? I guess is a fair question. Is she injured, or is it something other than an injury?
Her back is sore, so if there's anything more detailed than that, that's the training staff.
Do you think the Fever could get fined for not listing her as on the injury report?
No.
The Indiana Fever organization has not been silent about the minutes management approach, and the official framing deserves acknowledgement as a real and legitimate concern before it gets examined critically. Load management, player protection, keeping Clark physically available across a full 44-game season after the devastating 2025 campaign that produced 3 separate injuries and only 13 games played before an early September end to what should have been a breakthrough year. The logic is understandable on paper, and nobody, not the coaching staff, not the front office, not the fan base, and certainly not Clark herself, wants to repeat that experience. The concern is genuine, and the reasoning behind it is not manufactured. But here is where that reasoning begins breaking down when you actually watch the games with honest attention. Basketball players, and point guards in particular, require rhythm built through extended time on the floor. They need consecutive possessions to read how a defense is adjusting, to build the kind of chemistry with teammates that only repetition produces, to settle into the pace and flow that allows their best decision-making to operate instinctively rather than consciously. You cannot rotate a player out every time she begins finding that rhythm and then expect her to return 5 minutes later operating at the same level she would have reached if the run had continued uninterrupted. Momentum in basketball is physiologically real. Rhythm is physiologically real, and the results of disrupting both have been visible in the Fever's offensive consistency throughout this season in ways that the rotation philosophy has not adequately addressed.
The Indiana Fever took on the Portland Fire, and there were about 35 people in attendance. Damn! Fans, if any fans were outside ready to show up, they turned their car around. If somebody was in the parking garage getting ready to pay the parking attendant, as they're handing over the cash, they're looking at their phone. Oh, Caitlin Clark's not playing. I'll take my cash back. Yeah, I'm not coming. Damn.
The attendance numbers are building a public record of consequences that nobody inside the Indiana Fever organization can credibly dismiss as unrelated to the minutes management approach and the broader uncertainty around Clark's role. Indiana has dropped to 5th in home attendance across the WNBA in 2026. 5th for a franchise whose acquisition of Clark in 2024 triggered one of the most dramatic attendance surges the league had ever witnessed in such a compressed time frame. When Clark is on the floor for extended stretches running the offense, the building reflects it immediately and completely. Packed, loud, energized with the specific electricity that comes from an audience that knows they are watching someone. Extraordinary, do extraordinary things. The uncertainty around her availability and her minutes has removed the certainty that made purchasing a ticket feel like a guaranteed worthwhile investment. There was a game this season where Clark was removed from the starting lineup less than 2 hours before tip-off, meaning fans who had traveled to Indianapolis, booked hotels, arranged their schedules, and paid premium prices had the entire nature of their evening changed without meaningful advance notice. That is not a fan experience that builds loyalty or sustains commercial growth. That is a lottery ticket sold at full price, and the fan base has been responding accordingly through their purchasing decisions.
As I was doing my reaction to the game, we witnessed in real time me seeing the attendance dropping to 14,500. And me going, that's the lowest attended game in the history of Caitlin Clark's arrival. That's nearly 3,000 empty seats. Fans are paying attention. Fans are unhappy. Look, Indiana Fever front office, leadership, Herb Simon, Pacers organization.
Section 8. The impact of the minutes management approach extends considerably beyond what any individual game's box score can capture, and this is the dimension of the conversation that deserves more sustained analytical attention than it typically receives in the mainstream coverage. When Clark is on the floor for extended and uninterrupted stretches, every other Indiana Fever player operates in a more favorable competitive environment. Defenses cannot make the adjustments that allow them to sag into the paint and remove driving lanes when her shooting range demands attention from every defender on every possession. They cannot allow their off-ball attention to slip for even a single moment because the cost of that lapse is a logo 3 or a no-look pass to a cutting teammate that the play never looked like it was coming. The reads become genuinely difficult for defending coaches in ways that create real and exploitable advantages for the players around her.
You know the love was X-rated, that's how we made it. Drinking a balance of patience, watch how you take it. Can't keep no bitches, it's too dangerous. Up here that's raving. Took everything up for the taking, I couldn't save it. See red and blues, I hit the pavement. Got low, got vacant. She needed angles, I need angels. I'm
Removing her from that equation does not produce a neutral competitive outcome. It changes the entire defensive calculation and makes everyone else on the floor less effective simultaneously. Stephanie White has spoken about adjusting Clark's role and deploying her in modified ways within the system, but there is a basketball reality underneath every coaching philosophy that adjustments cannot override. The most dangerous version of Caitlin Clark is the version that has been on the floor long enough to be fully present in the game. You cannot manufacture that through rotation management. You can only allow it to exist by keeping her out there and trusting what happens when you do. Hoopsonic will be watching every minutes chart and every possession with the documentation this situation requires. Drop your honest take below. Is the load management approach protecting Clark, or is it costing this team more than the risk it is designed to prevent? And maybe that is why what happened with Joe walking to the family section hit people so hard, because it was not really about one timeout, one substitution, or one stretch on the bench. It felt bigger than that. It felt like a visible crack in something fans had come to expect from this franchise. For 2 years, Caitlin Clark had become more than just a player on a roster. She became the center of the Indiana Fever identity. Every possession seemed to carry weight when she had the ball in her hands. Every pass felt like it could turn into something dangerous. Every deep shot, every fast break read, every sudden shift in pace changed the energy inside that building. Fans were not just showing up to watch basketball. They were showing up to feel that electricity, and that is what makes this situation harder to ignore, because when Clark is on the bench for long stretches, it is not simply one player sitting down. The pace changes, the spacing changes, the pressure on defenders changes, the confidence of the offense can shift. Even players around her often look different when she is commanding the floor, because defenses are forced to respect what she can do from anywhere. That is what elite gravity looks like. It is not always measured in points. Sometimes it is measured in panic, a defender stepping higher than usual, a help defender hesitating for half a second, a lane opening because 2 players drift too far toward her. That ripple effect matters, and when she is removed in unpredictable bursts, Indiana sometimes looks like a team trying to rediscover its rhythm from scratch. Fans can feel that. They may not break down every possession like coaches do. They may not track advanced numbers or lineup combinations, but they understand momentum. They understand when a building feels alive. They understand when an offense suddenly loses its sharpness. And that is where frustration keeps growing, because this is not criticism rooted in emotion alone. It is rooted in expectation. People watched this franchise explode in relevance when Clark arrived. National attention surged, road arenas filled, broadcast numbers climbed. The Fever became one of the most talked about teams in women's basketball. That kind of rise changes everything. It changes pressure, it changes scrutiny, and it changes how every decision gets viewed. So when fans see Clark dressed, healthy looking, engaged, bouncing on the bench, tracking every possession like she is ready to step in, they naturally ask the same question: why is she sitting now? Sometimes there is a medical reason, sometimes there is strategy, sometimes coaches are protecting long-term health in ways fans cannot fully see. That part is real, but perception matters too, especially when the face of a franchise is involved. And right now, perception is becoming part of the story. Because Joe did not walk toward the media section. He did not walk toward executives. He walked toward the people who had watched Caitlin Clark's entire basketball journey unfold before anyone knew her name, her family, the same people who saw the early mornings, the practices, the pressure, the rise from driveway basketball in Iowa to packed professional arenas. They know what her competitive fire looks like better than anyone. So when cameras caught them watching and Joe stepping in that direction, people paid attention, not because it proved something dramatic, but because it symbolized something deeper. This is no longer just a rotation debate. It has become a conversation about identity, expectations, trust, and what the Indiana Fever want to be while building around one of the biggest stars the WNBA has ever seen. Because if Clark is the engine, fans expect to see that engine running. And if the franchise is protecting its future, it has to balance that protection with the reality that momentum, chemistry, and confidence are built on consistency. That tension is what people are reacting to. Not just one bench moment, not just one game, but the bigger question behind all of it. How do you manage a superstar without dimming the very energy that made everything around her come alive in the first place?